Today, I need you to take a deep breath, because what you are about to see is one of the most astonishing testimonies this channel has ever shared. Imagine a man born into one of the most sacred and untouchable bloodlines of the Middle East, Farid Al-Hashim, a direct descendant of Muhammad, carrying on his shoulders centuries of tradition, honor, and expectations. Behind the marble walls where he grew up, however, there existed a dangerous silence, a void that not even the strictest prayers could fill. And everything begins to change the moment Farid, already studying in the West, comes across a debate by Charlie Kirk that makes him question everything he believed to be unchangeable. What happens next is almost unbelievable. Dreams, persecution, an encounter that changes destinies, and a final twist you will never forget. And to begin, check if you are already subscribed, like the video, and tell me where you are watching from, because this story is going to move you.
When I look back and try to understand where everything began, I realize that my life was always surrounded by rituals, expectations, and a kind of silence that few can imagine. My name is Farid Al-Hashim, born in Medina, shaped from the very first day to carry a legacy I did not choose. I grew up hearing, even before I understood the meaning of the words, that my blood was not ordinary. You carry the blood of the prophet. Your life is not your own, they repeated, and the more I grew, the more those words became invisible chains that everyone called honor, but that sometimes felt simply like weight to me. The house where I grew up was not just a house. It was almost a temple. The marble walls reflected too much light, as if even they were watching everything. Nothing escaped the eyes of the family. I woke up before the sun, always. The routine never changed. Ablutions, prayers, recitations, long fasts, memorization of texts, discussions about rules that governed every detail of life. My world was built from discipline and fear, not a declared fear, but the kind that settles slowly, like dust that accumulates until you no longer see the original color of things. In public, I was seen as an example. People treated me with reverence, as if I carried a spiritual authority that I myself never felt I possessed. But inside my home it was different. Everything was watched, measured, evaluated. Every word I spoke could be interpreted as weakness or even worse as questioning, and questioning was forbidden. I tried to be the perfect son, the leader in training, the silent heir of an ancestral legacy. But internally there was an uneasiness that grew slowly like a crack in the marble. It was something I tried to ignore, hide, suppress. No matter how many rules I followed, no matter how many times I knelt during the day, I felt as if God were always distant, unreachable, as if I had to climb mountains to be heard, as if every gesture I made were. That feeling followed me all my life, but it intensified when I went to study abroad. First in England, later in the United States. It was there that something happened, something I did not tell anyone for many years. I remember clearly the first time I heard the firm voice of Charlie Kirk in a video recommended on my feed. At first, I clicked only because they were debates about politics, freedom, and identity, topics I had a forbidden curiosity to explore. But as the video continued, I realized that behind those words there was a courage I had never seen before, a way of speaking about faith, morality, and purpose, without fear, without ceremony, without the layers of ritual I had always known. I was not searching for a new religion. I was not rejecting my family. I just felt that there was something more, a truth I had not yet reached, a God who seemed different from the distant God I had known all my life. This new interest became a secret, hidden behind headphones and private browser tabs. I watched debates at night while everyone slept, not because I wanted an internal revolution, but because something inside me insisted that I needed to listen. I did not know it yet, but this small curiosity would become the doorway to everything that would happen afterward. But then, the crisis came, and it came like an earthquake no one saw coming. It all began when a very close cousin was unjustly accused of violating family values. It was something small, distorted, manipulated, but enough to put the family's honor at risk. And when honor is all you have, any crack becomes an abyss. The house plunged into chaos. Meetings behind closed doors, muffled shouting, accusatory looks passing through the hallways like invisible blades. I had never seen my family react that way. Till then, I believed we were protectors of truth, guardians of justice. But in that moment, I realized that the fear of shame weighed more than the pursuit of what was right. I saw people I loved choose appearance instead of justice, and that destroyed me on the inside. The worst moment came when I tried to argue, when I tried to say that it did not seem fair. My uncle, one of the most respected in the family, looked at me as if I had committed an unforgivable sin. He said I was infected by dangerous Western ideas. He said I needed to be careful before my thoughts stained our name. The argument was so intense that I felt something break inside me. When the door was slammed shut in my face, I felt a loneliness I cannot describe. I walked into my room, locked the door, and sat on the floor. The world felt like it had lost its ground. And there, in the most suffocating silence of my life, I did something I was not prepared to do. I prayed, but not in the way I had been taught. Not with formulas, not with memorized words, not repeating rituals I knew by heart. I simply spoke. I spoke to the Creator as if I were a child who had lost the way. I asked for only one thing: truth. Not protection, not honor, not strength. Just truth. And for the first time, I cried. I cried like when I was a child and could not show fragility. I cried like someone finally admitting they are tired of carrying something far too heavy. I don't remember the exact moment I fell asleep. I only remember waking up. In another place. The dream didn't seem like a dream. Everything was too clear, too real, too intense. I was in a vast desert. The ground was hot beneath my feet. The wind cut through the air. The silence so profound that my own thoughts seemed to echo. The sunlight didn't hurt. It was as if everything had been paused for that encounter. I didn't know whether I should walk or stand still. Then I saw a light in the distance, large, vibrant, not like fire, not like an angel. It was someone. As the figure drew closer, my eyes began to fill with tears without me understanding why. My heart raced. My hands trembled. And when I finally managed to see, I realized it was a man, dressed in white. Not just any white, but a white that seemed alive, as if it radiated peace, warmth, and truth all at once. When he drew near, I tried to look away, because something inside me told me I wasn't worthy to look directly at him. But I couldn't. It was as if my eyes knew they were seeing something my soul had always sought. Even without knowing it was seeking it, he touched my shoulder, and in that touch there was warmth, strength, and tenderness all together. I felt my whole body heat up. I felt a kind of love that I can't put into words. Then he spoke, a voice that didn't come from outside. It came from within me. Farid, you asked for the truth. I am the truth. I fell to my knees, not because he forced me to, but because my body simply couldn't stand before him. It was a mixture of reverence, awe, and something I think I can call recognition, as if my soul knew who he was even before my mind understood. He said, "Come and follow me. I will show you who God really is." It went right through every part of me. It was as if each word untied knots I didn't even know existed. But then he said something that froze my blood. "But you will be persecuted because of my name. Do not be afraid, for I will be with you." Before I could ask anything, his light began to fade, as if being pulled away by an invisible breeze, and the desert disappeared. I woke up sweating, my body trembling, and there was something in the room, a scent of myrrh, a soft, deep smell that I had never smelled before. I knew deep down in my soul that this wasn't just a dream, but I still had no idea what it meant for my life, or what was about to happen. After that dream, I spent days trying to understand what had happened to me. I walked around the house as if I were on another plane, as if my eyes could see things I had previously ignored. The feeling was strange, a mixture of peace and conflict, as if something inside me had been awakened, but at the same time I knew that this would change everything in my life. I tried to act normally, following my routine, fulfilling my obligations, reciting what I always recited. But nothing I did seemed real. It felt like I was repeating an old version of myself, and it was in this state of silent confusion that the worst happened. Days after the scandal involving my cousin, he suddenly fell ill. And it wasn't a mild illness or something momentary. He fell into a state that frightened even the coldest men in the family. High fever, tremors, difficulty breathing, as if his body were collapsing from the inside. The doctor said it was an extreme consequence of stress, an emotional collapse that turned into a physical collapse. I remember his face when they put him on the stretcher to take him to the hospital. He tried to look strong, but his eyes betrayed the fear. The whole family gathered around him, talking loudly, asking questions, pressuring the doctors. Chaos seemed to have followed each of us since that scandal. And I, standing there observing everything, felt as if I were returning to the same desert from the dream. Only this time, the desert was my heart. In the hospital, the atmosphere was heavy. White lights, the smell of chemicals, the hurried footsteps of nurses, worried voices. It all seemed to echo inside my head. And the worst part was seeing my cousin unconscious, his skin pale, his body weakened, his breathing irregular. He didn't deserve this. He had always been the most loyal, the most upright, the most steadfast among us. But still, they had placed a blame on him that wasn't his. People around me talked, commented, speculated. But inside, my heart was at war. I couldn't get the dream I had, the voice I heard, the touch on my shoulder out of my mind, and that phrase that still burned inside me. I am the truth. Something deeper was happening, something that no one there in that hospital would be able to understand. I waited for a moment when no one was watching. I approached his bed, feeling as if every step was being observed. My fingers trembled. My chest felt tight. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I didn't know if I had the right. But there was something greater than my fear, a courage that wasn't born from within me, but from something that had touched my soul days before. I leaned close to him, almost breathless, and for the first time I let slip from my lips a name I had only known until then, in the desert of dreams. I whispered softly, almost inaudibly, afraid of being heard, "Jesus, if it was you who visited me, touch him." When I pronounced that name, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It wasn't fear. It was something different, a mixture of reverence and hope, as if that name carried a real living weight. After that, I walked away. Nobody noticed. I went back to the corner of the room where I watched the doctors doing their work. Night fell. The lights dimmed. The family, exhausted, ended up dozing off in uncomfortable chairs, and I, sitting against the wall, stayed there feeling my heart beat faster than ever. I didn't know what was going to happen. I only knew that something inside me had changed when I pronounced that name. It all happened in the early morning hours. I heard a slight rustling sound, like someone had moved the covers, then a faint, almost scratchy voice. Everyone jumped up immediately, and the doctors were called in a hurry. When we got closer, he was sitting up in bed, awake, conscious, as if he had never been in danger. He looked around confused, but he seemed fine. There was no more fever. His breathing was normal. The color had returned to his cheeks. But what really left everyone speechless was what he said. I saw a white light. Someone was beside me. The entire room fell silent. Some family members tried to explain it, saying it could have been delirium, a feverish effect, a hallucination. Others said it was a coincidence, that his body was simply reacting. But I knew exactly what had happened. I felt my heart race, my breath catch. His eyes met mine for a moment, and I saw something there, a glimmer, a peace. And I understood that my prayer had not been ignored. At that moment, something was confirmed within me. It was no longer just a dream. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't delusion. What happened in the desert was real. That man was real. That name had real power. And for the first time in my life, I felt a certainty so profound that it couldn't be expressed in words. A certainty that pierced my soul like a silent lightning bolt. The truth had found me. But that certainty brought with it a weight I wasn't ready to carry, at least not at that moment. After that day, I secretly began searching for more information about what I had experienced. I couldn't simply ignore it. My mind kept returning to the dream, the voice, the light, the touch, my cousin's healing. I needed to understand. I spent nights glued to the computer, researching, secretly watching videos, deleting browsing history. And without realizing it, I returned to Charlie Kirk's videos. But this time, not for the political debates. I was looking for anything that connected faith, truth, courage, any clue, any angle that could help me understand this new world I had just entered. The more I watched, the more I felt there was an invisible thread connecting everything. A kind of spiritual thread running through the arguments, the stories he mentioned, the way he spoke of the Christian faith frankly, with conviction. It wasn't just talk. It was real life. It was real transformation. So I started going into forums, blogs, and videos of people sharing their spiritual experiences. Each account seemed to pull harder on the thread I could no longer let go of. Something inside me burned, not with restlessness, but with discovery. The feeling was like opening a window after living my whole life in an airless room. But secrets don't last forever. One day my family found out. I'm not sure exactly when they noticed. Maybe someone entered the room while I was sleeping. Maybe they checked my history through the home network. Maybe it was just accumulated suspicion. What matters is that suddenly, I was called to a family meeting that nobody warned me about beforehand. When I entered the room, I immediately sensed that something was wrong. The silence was different. The stares were heavy. There was a feeling of judgment in the air, a feeling I knew all too well. My father spoke. He didn't shout. He didn't bang on the table. He didn't show anger, but the coldness in his voice hurt more than any scream. He said he had found some worrying things on my computer, research on Christianity, videos about the Christian faith, debates on religious freedom. He asked if I had forgotten who I was. He asked if I was trying to bring shame to our family lineage. He asked if I wasn't aware of the responsibility I carried. And when I tried to explain, the words wouldn't come out. My uncle, the same one who had accused me weeks before of having dangerous Western ideas, raised his voice saying that this needed to stop immediately, that I was putting us all at risk, that this kind of interest wasn't just inappropriate, it was shameful. I tried to talk. I tried to explain that it was just curiosity, that I wasn't abandoning anything, that I just wanted to understand. But they didn't want to understand. They weren't there to listen. They were there to correct me. They started saying that I needed help, that I was confused, that it would be better for me to spend more time with religious leaders, to rewire my mind. And then came the final blow. My father said he was going to take my computer away. He said that if I continued with this, I would be cut off from the inheritance. He said that my insistence could ruin everything we've built over generations. I left that room with a weight on my chest that felt like it was crushing my bones. It was as if I were trapped between two worlds, the world of family honor and the world of truth that I had experienced. For days, I was torn. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had felt. But I also knew what I could lose. My family, my safety, my public identity, my standing, my history. But no matter how hard they tried to convince me, no matter how much fear, pressure, and surveillance they used, there was one thing I couldn't do: deny what I experienced that night in that desert during that encounter. And this internal struggle, this silent war, was only just beginning. I really thought I could hide everything. I thought that deleting browsing history, using private browsing, rearranging files, would be enough to keep my questions to myself. But that's a curious thing. When the truth starts burning in your heart, it seems like the whole world starts to notice, even if you don't say a word. I had already felt different looks, strange questions, indirect comments thrown into the air as if by chance. But even so, I couldn't imagine what was to come. The day that completely changed my life began with something simple. My mother asked me to get some things from my room. Clothes that were out of place. Nothing suspicious, nothing alarming. But when I went upstairs and pushed open the half-open door, I felt a silence in the air that didn't suit the house. A heavy a silence that betrayed something wrong. And when I took my first step inside, I saw my father standing in the center of the room, holding something in his hands. It was the Bible. The Bible I had hidden inside an old backpack, among clothes no one wore. The Bible I only opened when I was absolutely sure everyone was asleep. The Bible that until then was the intimate symbol of my secret journey and of my guilt, My father's gaze cut through the air. It was a look that mixed shock, anger, disappointment, and fear I had never seen in his eyes before. A fear of what this meant, of what I meant. He held the book up in the air as if it were irrefutable proof of a crime. "What is that?" he asked. But it wasn't a question. It was a statement. I tried to speak, but my body froze. My mouth went dry. My mind seemed to scream, but no words came out. My father didn't wait for an answer. He shouted for two uncles, called my older brother, and within minutes the whole house seemed to tremble with hurried footsteps, raised voices, and slamming doors. They entered the room as if they were dealing with something dangerous, and perhaps for them it was. A contamination. A threat to the family's honor. Something that could stain generations. My father, his face red and his breathing heavy, said that this was unacceptable. He said I was about to destroy everything that had been preserved with so much sacrifice. He said I was shaming not only our home, but all our blood. And before I could even try to explain what I myself didn't fully understand, he summoned religious leaders from the community. Well-known, influential, respected men. Men I grew up seeing as authorities. They arrived quickly as if they had been expecting the summons. They were called to a private room in the house, the room we only opened on formal occasions, and I was led there, surrounded by gazes that seemed to pierce me. When I entered, my chest trembled. My hands were sweating, my legs felt unresponsive. I knew what happened to people accused of abandoning traditions. I knew what happened to those who dared to touch on forbidden topics. I knew the risk I was taking. I sat in a chair in the center of the room. My father was beside me. The leaders were in front of me. The door was closed. The curtains were drawn. And the ceiling light illuminated only the center, as if it wanted to expose my entire soul. One of the leaders placed a document on the table. "Sign," he said. "Declare that you have no interest in external beliefs. Declare that you are only researching but don't believe in any of it." It was a letter of renunciation, a public confession of total loyalty to family tradition, and a complete denial of anything that might point to the name already engraved in my heart. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it wanted to burst out of my chest. I knew that if I signed that document, I would be burying everything I had lived through. I would be erasing the desert, the touch, the light, the words. I would be betraying the truth, that same truth for which I had cried. But I also knew that if I didn't sign, I had no idea what would happen. I could be dismissed, expelled, abandoned, isolated, or worse. My hands began to tremble when I picked up the pen, and at that exact moment as my fingers touched the paper, something happened that neither of us could have predicted. There was a loud bang. Not an ordinary noise. Not a distant rumble of thunder. It was as if the entire house had been struck by a force emanating from within, not from without. A deep, vibrant sound that made the ground tremble. The lights went out. All of them. At the same time. The room plunged into absolute darkness. I heard muffled screams, confused footsteps, people calling to one another. And in the midst of that chaos, a flash of light pierced the window. A flash so strong, so pure, so intense that it illuminated only me. I sat motionless, unsure if I was awake or experiencing something supernatural, but the light enveloped me like an invisible shield. It didn't burn. It didn't hurt. It was a light that seemed alive and full of peace. The leaders retreated immediately. I heard sighs, saw shadows moving backward, and sensed the fear in their movements. They didn't know what they were seeing. None of them had an answer. My father fell to his knees. I will never forget his expression, a mixture of terror and reverence. He put his hands to his face and said, in a trembling voice, "Something bigger than us is here." My mother, who had entered the room seconds before the blackout, began to cry. Not tears of despair. It was a deep, emotional cry, as if something was tearing something apart inside her. She said she saw a white shadow behind me, the figure of a man, not detailed, not threatening, but clearly recognizable as a presence. I didn't see it, but I felt it. I felt a presence behind me, as strong, as real as the light illuminating me. It was the same feeling as in the desert, the same peace, the same authority. When the lights went out, everything went back to normal. But nothing was normal. The people in the room were unable to utter a word for long minutes. None of them dared to touch me. None of them asked me to sign anything. None of them dared to raise their voice. And at that moment I understood. I was not alone. I've never been there. From that day on, my family did not accept my faith. They never celebrated it. They never supported it. But they also never again tried to force me, intimidate me, or punish me. It was as if the house itself had witnessed something that no human argument could erase. Religious leaders left the house with looks that I never fully understood. A mixture of fear, bewilderment, and silence. My father couldn't look me in the eye for days. My mother avoided talking about what she saw. But what no one knew was that years later, I would discover something even more profound. That supernatural manifestation, that light, that presence, marked two young people in our family. Two distant cousins who were in the house that day. They heard the screams, saw the flash through the window, felt the tremor, and began to search in secret. And it was this search that led them to Jesus. The persecution I experienced became the path to salvation for others. After that, the transformation began to happen almost inevitably. I knew I needed to leave. I knew my life would never be the same. With the help of Christian contacts I met discreetly, I was gradually able to plan my trip to the United States. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But it was possible. When I finally arrived, I felt like I had entered another world. Not because of the culture, the freedom, or the environment, but because, for the first time, I could seek Jesus without fear. I started reading the Bible every day. Each page seemed to speak to parts of my soul that I didn't even know existed. I studied at night, in the morning, during breaks, in parks, in libraries, and on one of those nights I had another dream. Not as intense as the desert fire, but equally real. Jesus appeared to me again. He spoke about peace. He spoke about courage. He spoke about purpose. And when I woke up, I knew I needed to take the next step. I was looking for a small American church, a simple, welcoming community, full of people who had no idea about my story, but who embraced me as if they already knew me. On the day of my baptism, when I entered the water, something inside me broke. And I cried. I cried like a child. Not from sadness, but from freedom. After that, I started sharing my experience with other people who came from the same culture as me. I created hidden profiles. I participated in secret groups. I spoke with men and women who were experiencing the same internal struggle that I was experiencing. And little by little, without realizing it, I became someone who brought hope. Someone who said, "I've been through this. I know what you're feeling, and there is a way out." I joined ministries that help religiously persecuted people. I started praying with people every day, to advise, to listen, to support, and that's when I realized the results. My fear disappeared. A profound peace filled my heart, and that evangelistic calling burned within me like a living fire. I didn't know everything. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing. The truth that found me in the desert, now it guided me every day. So after everything you've heard, I want you to take a deep breath with me. Because Farid's story isn't just moving. It's a living reminder that no desert is too vast, no tradition is too rigid, no past is strong enough to stop Jesus from reaching a heart that cries out for truth.
What Farid experienced, from the supernatural encounter in the dream to the light that protected him in his most critical moment, was not fantasy. It was not coincidence. It was an answer. An answer for a man who grew up carrying a spiritual burden he did not choose, living between honor, demands, and surveillance, but who found freedom when he finally encountered the one who said, "I am the truth." And what's most striking is realizing how God transforms persecution into purpose. That same pressure that almost destroyed Farid became the path for others in his family to find Christ as well. Where there seemed to be an end, Jesus opened a beginning. Where there was fear, he placed mission. Where there was silence, he placed courage. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor. Check if you're already subscribed to the channel. It really helps spread powerful testimonies like this one. Also, leave a like. because it helps this video reach other people who are currently going through the same battle that Farid went through. And if you made it to the end, write it in the comments below. I love Jesus. This simple comment can reach someone who really needs this message. Now, get ready. Don't miss the next video that's already appearing on the screen. Saudi Arabian princess finds Jesus through Charlie Kirk and loses everything. A Christian testimony. Her story is as powerful as Farid's, perhaps even more so. See you there.